This is the Meetinghouse with Dwight A. Moody. News, reviews, commentary, and conversation on religion and American life. Now, here is Dr. Moody.
Hello, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. I hope it's a warm and welcoming place wherever you are this holiday season, as it is here with me in the mountains of North Carolina. I'm waiting for my family to arrive from Kentucky and Georgia and elsewhere in North Carolina, and I hope you are able to gather with friends and family and those that you love. I welcome you to the Meetinghouse, where we have conversation on religion and American life. Our conversation today is about immigration and refugee resettlement. Most appropriate today, as today is the day we celebrate the arrival onto our shores of the very first refugees, those British pilgrims. We're looking forward today to the recent influx of refugees, immigrants, resettlement people from Afghanistan, especially those arriving in the state of Oklahoma. My guest, I'll introduce her in a few minutes, is the Reverend Mary Heath. I am your host, Dwight Moody. Glad you've joined us today, or if you're listening to this as a podcast, welcome as well. I'll have the news in just a minute, and then a commentary entitled Giving Glory to Guns. My look at the two trials of Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin and the three men in Georgia. We're coming to you, of course, over radio and YouTube and streaming live on Facebook at themeetinghouse.net and also the St. Stephen's Live and on my personal Facebook page, Dwight A. Moody. So let's begin today. I have 6 stories in the news. Let's begin in Richland, Washington. Baronelle Stutzman, living in a small town, but her refusal to service a customer 8 years ago in her floral shop has sure raised a big stink. She is of the Southern Baptist faith and claimed that preparing for the wedding of 2 gay men violated her conscience. And that standoff went all the way to the Supreme Court. She announced last week she's retiring from her work, dropping the 8-year legal battle and settling with the plaintiffs, Robert Ingersoll and Kurt Freed, for the sum of $5,000. Quote, Jesus was with me all the way, end quote, she said with relief. The Washington State Supreme Court, though, wasn't. They ruled twice, unanimously, that neither religion nor the law gives a person the right to discriminate against others. The first of 2 stories from Oklahoma City. Archbishop Paul Coakley of Oklahoma City, chairman of the Catholic Committee on Domestic Justice and Human Development for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and Bishop James Wall of Gallup, New Mexico, chair of the Subcommittee on Native American Affairs, have written a letter to all Catholic bishops in the United States urging them to cooperate with requests from the federal government investigating tribal schools operated by religious groups. In their letter of November 9th, they wrote, quote, if the government asks for any records you may possess, we encourage cooperation, end quote. The U.S. Department of the Interior announced in June an investigation into the history of the administration and funding of these so-called Indian boarding schools. Many of these schools were operated by Christian groups. Also from Oklahoma City, Christian journalist Bobby Ross Jr. has penned a good summary of the facts about church life during and after COVID. He has identified 4 primary trends. Number 1, worship attendance is 30 to 50% lower than before the pandemic, that according to the Barna Research Group. Number 2, the mini church movement has become a reality with 2/3 of Christian churches in the United States having fewer than 100 people. Number 3, 38% of pastors are burnt out and seriously considering leaving their pastoral work. Again, research from the Barna Group. And finally, most churches, however, and this is a piece of good news, have found their financial footing, according to research from Lifeway Research in Nashville. They are not suffering from the impact of the economy or the pandemic. Ross is editor of the Christian Chronicle, and his summary article was published in getreligion.com website. From Cleveland, Christian Aid Ministries announced that 2 of the 17 persons kidnapped and held for ransom by a gang in Haiti have been released. However, the group also reported that they, quote, cannot provide or confirm the names of those released, the reasons for their release, where they are from, or their current location, end quote. The entire episode has generated, first, considerable interest in the Anabaptist community with which these missionaries are associated, and second, substantial cooperation between American, Canadian, and Haitian Christians in praying and working toward a resolution. From Brunswick, Georgia, we've been covering the murder of Ahmaud Arbery for, well, ever since it started, from our home base in Brunswick, Georgia. The trial of the 3 men accused of murder in the death of Ahmaud Arbery has now moved to jury deliberations. The result could come at any time. The prosecution reasserted their contention that the 3 men initiated the confrontation in February of last year and thus are prohibited from claiming self-defense. The defense, though, in a stunning moment, asserted that Ahmaud Arbery was responsible for his own death because he did not acquiesce to the demands of the 3 men chasing him, a rationale rooted in the culture of slavery. The area ministers, led by Rabbi Rachel Bregman, have been very active throughout the trial and are now poised to lead the community response to the verdict, whatever it is. And finally, from San Antonio, Texas, just this week, the Society of Biblical Literature at their annual meeting elected as a president their first Black woman and the first person from Africa. Dr. Musa Dube, professor of New Testament at the University of Botswana, has been elected president for a 1-year term. Botswana is in southern Africa, immediately north of South Africa. She holds the PhD in New Testament studies from Vanderbilt University. I'll be back in just a minute. That's all the news. My guest, Reverend Mary Heath, in just a minute. You're in the Meetinghouse, and I'm your host, Dr. Dwight A. Moody, coming to you today from Hendersonville, North Carolina. It's clear and cool today, and I'm looking forward to a great holiday weekend, as I hope you are as well. My guest is the Reverend Mary Heath, a minister of the Trinity Christian Church of Edmond, Oklahoma. That's in the greater Oklahoma City area. She also heads the Commission on Refugee and Immigration Ministries for the Christian Church in Oklahoma, Disciples. She holds a Master of Divinity degree from Phillips Theological Seminary, also in Oklahoma. Welcome to the Meetinghouse, Mary.
Good afternoon. It's good to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're quite welcome. I look forward to our conversation, and I can't think of a single subject more appropriate to Thanksgiving than the resettlement of refugees.
Right.
You are part of the team welcoming Afghan people to Oklahoma and also to the United States. Reports are that 50,000 Afghans are coming to the United States, with 80% of them already here. 38 states, I'm told, have taken Afghan refugees, including Oklahoma. What's the status of this relocation right now in Oklahoma?
Well, right now we have received about a third of the individuals that are coming to Oklahoma. There are approximately 130 who already have permanent housing, and the rest are waiting to find permanent housing. They are being welcomed by numerous organizations and numerous people who are willing to help out and show love for their neighbor. We have we have more coming. They will be coming until the middle of February, I believe. It's
Yes.
possible that we could receive 50 people in a week. We just don't know how many people will come, but about a third are here and doing very well.
And these are families, I take it. Some are families, some are solo. Children and adolescents are among them. Is that right?
That's correct. We have our biggest family so far has been a family of 11, and most are families. There are some individuals, and in many of the families, mom is expecting another child.
Wow.
So some of these families are very big.
Now, I know the coordinator of the White House agency overseeing all of this, his name is Jack Markle, was just in Oklahoma last week. Did you happen to see him or be at any place where he was?
No, I wasn't.
These families, and the reports are that there, as you said a minute ago, 50 a week. Do you know where they're coming from? That is, what Army base that they were? Were they all at the same base? Or are they coming from different bases?
I believe most of ours are coming from Fort Bliss.
And where is that? Is that in Oklahoma?
No,
Is that in Texas? Where is Fort Bliss?
that's a good question.
Maybe we'll look it up here in
We'll
just
have
a
to look
minute.
that up.
They left Kabul in September, so they've been on the road for 2 months at least. Do you know
Yeah.
what happens at the Army bases? What do they go through? What kind of interrogation or what are they given?
These refugees are going to be very well vetted. That's why the processing takes so long. Everything that they have done with America, for America, everything that they've done in their lives there, it's researched. They're also given health care, immunizations, and of course, food and lodging for what is sometimes a very long process in being allowed into our country. It's actually quite detailed. It's actually quite almost even invasive to be able to pass the test to get into our country.
So they are on an Army base for several months where they are given all this material, and then they come to Oklahoma. When they come to Oklahoma, they're put in what, hotels?
Yes. Everyone
And
has started out in a hotel.
And so hotels around Oklahoma City and other areas. Who's in charge of it there in Oklahoma?
The official refugee resettlement organization is Catholic Charities here in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are coordinating the refugees that are going to Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Stillwater, Oklahoma.
And you're in Oklahoma City. And how long does it take them to move out of the hotel into a more permanent residence?
That is that's determined by the size of the family, the availability of housing, how quickly caseworkers can get to the family and evaluate them and their needs. Depends on how many sponsors we have who are available to set up housing. So it could take days or it could take weeks. The larger families will be harder to place, so it will take longer.
So let me ask you about, you mentioned caseworkers. Who are these people who are doing case management for these refugees?
They're with Catholic Charities.
And so they're part of the professional staff of Catholic Charities. Perhaps many of them have been doing this for a long time with many different kinds of refugee resettlement programs, right?
Yes. I've worked with two caseworkers who are just marvelous, and they've worked with people from all over the globe.
Now, you've been involved with this for a long time yourself. Tell us about this.
Well, I began as a mission worker in Central America, mostly Nicaragua, and then in Mexico and Guatemala. I've attended a work study program in language school, and
So, so
it
you
started out
live,
as understanding the problems that they have in their countries, and then I went into, well, God is calling me to do something here in the US for these people too. So then I began to work in organizations that helped on the border, organizations that helped resettle people, and study through seminary. Our seminary has a fantastic class in which you go to the border and study all of the problems and all of the reasons why people have to migrate. Not the ones who want to or need to, they have to.
and this is true all over the world, that
Yes.
there are refugees at any given time, hundreds of thousands of refugees. What are the types of things they are fleeing all over the world?
Right. So there are many environmental refugees. They're fleeing because they've had a natural disaster. Their homes are
Mhm,
no longer viable. They can't
mhm,
survive there. Crops have withered. They can't feed themselves. There's no food available.
mhm.
There are political and religious refugees who have to run from their country for their lives because they worked on the wrong politician's campaign or because they angered the wrong government official or a military member. People are having to run, of course, we know, from drug lords and warlords. And uh, so there's many different reasons why there are so many refugees globally. Those are
And
the
of course,
main.
we've been watching this whole thing in Afghanistan. It was stunning to all of
Tragic,
us. Yeah, it's very
tragic.
tragic and stunning that things collapsed as quickly as they did, just from another whole issue of us having spent 20 years in Afghanistan and the whole American presence over there collapsed in a matter
Right.
of days. It's just stunning. And so I don't know how many Afghans left their country this fall, but at least 50,000 of them are coming into the United States. They're scattering really all over the world, I would think.
Yes, they're going to other countries too. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And the nature of how it happens so quickly can attest to the power, the political power of some of these organizations in other nations. They are very powerful and sometimes very ruthless people.
so the refugees are coming into Oklahoma. They're being managed by the Catholic Charities. They're staying in hotels. Who else is involved in the process?
Oh my goodness. We have so many. I'll just name a few of the major players. There's an organization called Sparrow Project, and they offer long term care for refugees once they no longer qualify for the resettlement program. They're there to still offer help and aid in all sorts of areas, especially education, language, and counseling.
Okay,
And we
so
have care. Okay.
let me stop and ask you, when you said that they help when they're no longer eligible for the refugee program, and you're talking about a federal program here that
Right.
would for of some months or years, right?
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, they get. I think a family gets $200 or $300 a month from the federal government to help offset their expenses.
Right. And there's also many more financial needs: rent once they get into their own apartment or home, if they are unable to find a job or they aren't getting a work permit or work authorization. It's a huge financial need that they have. And so Sparrow Project is there to help also with daily things like figuring out the internet, how to get on the internet here in
Mm-hmm,
America,
mm-hmm.
how to use the system correctly so that you get to the doctor, get to the grocery store. All of those things are so new to these people. Um, we also have care, and they are fantastic. They are ran by Adam Sultani, and they are helping to welcome the refugees by giving them their first religiously appropriate halal meal,
Wow.
helping them to feel comfortable, talking to them, giving them a welcome basket, which has a prayer rug, which is vastly important for their religion, a copy of the Quran, toiletries. They greet them and make them feel welcome and make them feel safe. And then they continue long-term care afterwards also.
Do you know how many Afghan people were already living in Oklahoma?
I think we only had about 10,000, if I remember correctly. We don't have a large
Well, still
population.
10,000 Afghans, because they would constitute only a portion of the Muslim population, which would be larger than that, I assume.
Mhm. Right. Oh, no, right. Yeah, let me correct that. I think we had about 10,000 people from
Muslims.
different Muslim nations in
Yeah.
the state. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I read where there are 11 Muslim mosques in the Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Stillwater metropolitan areas. But I guess even those communities are pretty diverse because
They are.
they come from all over the world.
They are.
Are they involved in the resettlement effort?
They are, absolutely. As are two of our major Jewish synagogues here in Oklahoma City. Both have female rabbis who are fantastic, and they are both very supportive.
Well, not everybody is supportive of this effort. I read that one prominent political leader posted a video back in September, and I want to quote what he said. This is what he said in an appeal to citizens of Oklahoma. I encourage you to call and email the governor, call and email your legislators, and tell them not to allow Afghan refugees into Oklahoma, end quote. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is. Unfortunately, we have a leader or two who needs to read the gospel of Jesus Christ and what it says about welcoming the stranger and feeding the
Amen.
hungry and clothing the naked and loving your neighbor.
Amen. Amen.
I think we need some Bible study here, unfortunately.
Is this resistance ongoing, or has it died down some?
I believe it has died down. I believe people are ready to accept the fact that these are our new neighbors and they will receive our care and our love. And we will do what we have to do to help them adjust and acclimate to their new life. And, we have to keep in mind our new neighbors have been traumatized. They've had to flee for their life.
Mm-hmm.
They have had to leave behind family and friends for whom they are worried, and rightly so. They've had to put their lives into the hands of strangers and trust, and fortunately, they have great faith that these strangers will take care of them and help them out in this new place. We're a very red state. So we will always have some anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim sentiment, but we work very hard at educating people and correcting that because our religions here in Oklahoma actually work very well together.
Good. It sounds like it. So let's talk about if a congregation, perhaps one of your disciple congregations, if they want to be involved in this particular resettlement process, what is involved? What does a congregation actually do?
Oh, there are many things that a congregation can do. They can sign up to be welcoming, which means they take the welcome basket to the families that arrive. They can sign up to help transport them. When people show up, they have numerous appointments, doctor's appointments, clinic appointments, appointments with government offices, and we need lots and lots of transportation. Churches can donate their vans and drivers. Since they're big families, we need bigger cars and vans. Churches can sponsor a new home, and so they provide everything that's needed for a family to move into a home. Churches can also be a part of collecting donations, giving donations, sorting donations. Oh my goodness. We've had to open up a building, one of our disciples' buildings, just to help sort through all of their donations, which tells me also that the people here have an outpouring of love because we've just had so many people want to help.
Yes, as you stated a few minutes ago, this is, of course, right at the center of Christian ministry and Christian mission.
Yes.
The network that I'm a part of here in the state of North Carolina, a Baptist network, we have two houses that elsewhere in the state, not where I am, but two homes that we are preparing for two Afghan families. But with 50,000 people coming in, it takes a lot of manpower to support them and help them and transport them and feed them and clothe them and care for them and best of all, befriend them.
Right. It does. And that's why we're thankful that so many people here in Oklahoma work together to support each other, to support each other's ministries, and to make sure that we don't overlap one another and try to do what someone else is already doing. We are communicating and making sure that all the needs get met. And wow, would be here half a day if I named all of the churches and all of the organizations that are part of this project.
Isn't it wonderful? Doesn't it encourage you with the goodness of just human beings and also your Christian or religious community out there in your state? It's encouraging, isn't it?
It is very encouraging. It it makes us understand that the presence of God is very real and that God is working through all of us. And any of us who choose to be a part of the family of God, we are able to do so. And it is amazing.
How does the Muslim Christian dynamic work? Uh, these people are coming in, some of them, many of them, perhaps all of them, very devout in their own faith, coming into a network that's largely, not completely, but largely of another religion, people devout in their own faith, motivated by their faith. How does that dynamic work? What happens in that interchange, in that movement together?
Well, it's really just a relationship of respect for one another's ideas and beliefs, and the knowledge that Muslims and Christians are much more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
And people just don't know this. The political leader we have here in Oklahoma does not realize this, apparently. The three great religions of the book, that's what God calls us to do, is to work together: the Jewish faith, the Muslim faith, and Christian faith. And so when we meet our Muslim neighbors, what we really just want to convey is that we have the same God and we love you and care for you. And the Muslim people who come care for and love us too, and they're grateful to be welcomed. And we are asking, no, actually, we're requiring everyone who works with our new neighbors must have a training. That way they understand the cultural and religious differences. That way, when Christians meet Muslims for the first time, they can welcome them in an appropriate way.
And for many Christians, it probably is the first time they've met a Muslim, or at least talked to one and sat down and tried to work together on doing something.
I would say probably some. Actually, again, most of our folks here that are in the Disciples of Christ and the other denominations have been very active in interfaith work already. But I would say there are some Christians who probably have not actually been in relationship with a Muslim person before.
What is a typical problem that may emerge in this whole effort of mobilizing so many Oklahoma citizens to care for, receive, welcome so many new people? What kind of problems would have emerged?
Probably the only ones that I can really see are, as I said, making sure that we're not all trying to do the same thing, and it's very well meted out between all of the organizations, so that we're not all stepping on each other's toes. And there's plenty of work for everyone to do, and that might be the foreseeable problem. We all expect that somewhere down the line, volunteers will fade, interest will fade. When the press stops covering it, out of sight, out of mind.
Sure,
And
sure.
that's what I see as being maybe probably the problem is long-term care when others have moved on and are not helping any longer. We will still need care for our new neighbors.
Yes, I think that is a real question, the long-term prospects for these Afghans who are in Oklahoma. Do you think it's likely they will stay in Oklahoma? Because you remember, in particular, let's just say the Hmong people, they were Southeast Asian people who immigrated over after the end of the Vietnam War. They were scattered all over the United States, but they gradually congregated in two places. One of them is here in North Carolina. The other one, I think, is in Wisconsin. Two large Hmong communities, that's HMONG. And I know there are a lot of Afghanis in California.
Right.
Do you think it's likely that after some months or years, these Afghanis, new residents in Oklahoma, will relocate elsewhere? Is that common? Has that happened in your experience?
Yes, it does make sense that you will eventually come back together with your own culture and the people that share your values and your religious life. And that's only natural. That's what all of us do. We all kind of stick to our tribe because that's what we know, and that's and they know us. And I think that most Afghan refugees will probably move around and collect with other larger groups. But I would bet that a few will fall in love with Oklahoma and fall in love with our wonderful imams here and stick around. I think some will.
You have been involved in this now for how long? You didn't give us a date, maybe 10 or 20 years in this refugee ministry?
Well, without dating myself, I've worked with immigration and refugee issues for almost 30 years.
Wow.
But yeah, this actual title that I have now for the Disciples of Christ in Oklahoma, I started in July of 2019. So I haven't been doing it a long time, but
yeah, boy, that's a lot of experience, though. 30 years of working with immigrants and refugees. That's a lot of experience and a lot of valuable wisdom that you've picked up along the way.
Well, I hope so. There's always more to learn. I'm still learning, and I still make mistakes.
Is this your process? Is this your first experience with Afghan people?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And is it your first experience with Muslim people?
No.
Are most, if not all, of the people from Afghan Muslims? Are there any Christians that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Are there any coming with other religious backgrounds? I don't even know what other religion
not that
might be over
I've
there.
been told.
Sikhs or whatever.
I think pretty much everyone is Muslim that is a refugee now from Afghan.
Now, do most of these people get work permits?
Your typical refugee who is seeking asylum for one reason or another at some point, it has been very difficult to get a work authorization for some. I'm working with one family now that it may take the father up to 2 years to get a work authorization because of his status. That's a long time.
That is a
to
long
need
time.
Financial support and not work. And all of these families want to work. They all want to work. I've never met an immigrant that does not want to work. As far as the Afghan refugees go that we are receiving now, we have been told the government has promised expedited work authorizations.
Well,
what expedited means, I don't know.
2 years instead of 4 years, huh? But
Could be. I
here we are in the United States. Everywhere you go now, everywhere you go, there's a sign up, now hiring, now hiring, now hiring. I went down to the local grocery store this week to order a Thanksgiving dinner
Mhm.
because my family's all coming in. And I was told this, no, we're not cooking at all this year. This is a big national chain. They said we don't have enough workers to cook turkey dinners this year. And
Right, right.
you go into restaurants and they're desperate for workers. Uh, the servers come up to us and say, please be patient. We're shorthanded today. I mean, every day this is happening. My feeling is let's give every one of the Afghanis a green card and let them go to work. We need
I
it.
I completely agree, right? It makes no sense that we have this huge amount of people willing to work, but
Yes.
they are disallowed to work. That makes no sense. I I feel like it's a deterrent. It's been used as a deterrent to discourage people from coming to the U.S. and from staying. But when you can't go back because your life will be taken from you,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't have a choice. But yes, I say give everybody the right to work, let everybody be, pay taxes like every other citizen,
Absolutely. Yeah.
support the government, support our system. Yes, I think you should start working as soon as you show up.
I think you should start working as soon as you show up in Oklahoma out
Unfortunately, we're
there.
not in charge in the government, but
You need to be in charge. Maybe you can get in charge out there in Oklahoma of the state. Is the state involved in this at all? Is there a state agency that's involved?
yes, yes, our Department of Human Services, they help. They are the ones that disperse the funds from the federal government to the families who need the financial help.
Right.
They also take care of medical needs. They will give medical care to the families. The children will always have health care here in Oklahoma, but
Yeah.
sometimes because of the refugees status, the parents won't always have health care. And the Department of Human Services also provides food access. It's called a SNAP card or SNAP.
Right. Right. And of course, that's the same food service that Americans all over the country get, the
Mhm.
SNAP program.
Right.
Who is your governor and what is the governor's attitude toward all this?
Well, we have Governor Stitt, and he actually was the one who accepted the large number of Afghan refugees that we will have. He has visited Afghanistan,
Good.
and Oklahoma has accepted the third highest number of refugees in the nation.
That's
And
amazing.
it is.
There are 12 states that have refused to accept any.
Right, right.
Isn't that
And
sad?
that's sad. That's sad.
But your
But
governor,
Oklahoma,
well, God bless Oklahoma. God bless your governor.
yes, God bless Governor Stitt in Oklahoma. We have a lot of folks coming into Oklahoma.
That's great. God bless you, Mary.
Well, thank you. And God bless you and your program. This is so exciting.
You are the chairman of the Commission on Refugees and Immigrants for the Christian Church of Oklahoma Disciples.
Correct.
And you are the co-pastor of Trinity Church in Edmond, Oklahoma.
Right.
And you've been talking to us about your involvement in the resettlement of all of these Afghan refugees, people looking for a new home, a new place, new friends, new work, new country, everything. Do you think they're going to become citizens? Do they want to become citizens?
Oh, absolutely. I've never met a refugee or immigrant that did not want to eventually become a citizen. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, God bless you in your work, and
Thank you.
may you inspire many people, and may your tribe increase. Mary, thank you for being our guest in the Meeting House today. I'll be back in just a minute with my commentary, which I wrote last week, based on the conversation 2 weeks ago with my guest in the Meeting House, a university president in Minnesota. I'll be back with that entitled, Is This a Spiritual Gift? I'll be right back. Toward the end of my conversation in the Meetinghouse 2 weeks ago, I asked my guest a question. What spiritual discipline has been important to your journey and to your success? My guest was a distinguished State University chancellor who had just published a book about communication. But she is also a Christian, a scholar of Christian preaching with several published books, and the wife of a Methodist minister. I was expecting something, a good answer, but not what she said. Conversation, she said to me. Seeking out conversation has been a soul feeder, she explained. I am a question asker, a curious person, end quote. I was not expecting it because nowhere else in the spiritual disciplines literature is there an affirmation of conversation as something holy and essential, even anointed. There are other things, like those described in the book, The Spirit of the Disciplines by the late Dallas Willard, things like solitude and silence, prayer, simple and sacrificial living, meditation upon God's word and ways, and service to others. Or I could mention a very similar list proposed by the equally influential and very much alive Richard Foster and used in his Renovar network. Things like meditation, prayer, fasting, study, simplicity, solitude, submission, service, confession, worship, guidance, and celebration. These are very familiar to many people. When I did a Google search, of the 38 million sites that came up, these were listed: meditation, prayer, fasting, simplicity, fellowship, journaling, chastity, stewardship. Many people have a different list for what we call spiritual disciplines. And of these, I would say that fellowship, worship, and service all sound like things that involve other people, but mostly these spiritual practices are solo enterprises, especially solitude, of course, silence, prayer, meditation, fasting, journaling, and certainly chastity. But conversation? Yes, maybe in a confessional booth, if you could count that conversation, or in seeking and giving guidance to others or teaching, but not in the sense of ordinary vocal intercourse between people, of the common practice of talking with another person, of revealing what's on your mind and listening to what is on theirs, very much like we've done today here in the Meetinghouse. I should have guessed as much of Dr. Lori Carroll, my broadcast guest. Her book, Communication for a Change, begins with the acknowledgement that the book is, quote, written by talkers who believe in conversation for its own sake, end quote. In her handwritten note on the front flyleaf, she wrote to me by name saying, quote, thank you for many wonderful conversations, end quote. Toward the end of her book, she references the famous book by Martin Buber, I and Thou, with its central thesis, quote, only through dialogue can we become fully human, end quote. Early in that chapter, she describes communication through conversation. Quote, it clarifies and shapes thought, she writes. It connects people and ideas, provides the opportunity for influence, for learning, even for change. And even earlier, she wrote this, quote, think too about how to converse with both candor and sympathy, to be clear while also demonstrating cultural humility, to advocate while also listening, modifying your words to integrate what you've just heard, to change one's mind mid-sentence as the process of speaking clarifies your thought, to deepen relationship through vulnerability of self-disclosure, tuned to nuances of response, to apologize and make lasting amends, to learn while you're teaching, end quote. If this is not a discipline of the spirit, of the human spirit, of the human soul and body, I don't know what is. And as I read her words and listened to her answer, I thought about Jesus. Think about it for a minute. His conversation with the scholars in the temple when he was 12 years old, or his conversation with the disciples, those two disciples, you remember, on the road to Emmaus after the resurrection. His conversations with the woman at the well, with the man who came at night, Nicodemus, with his followers on a retreat near Caesarea Philippi when he asked the famous question, who do you say that I am? He even had, as I recall, as you recall, conversation with others while he was hanging on the cross, talking to the people who were watching and the people who were hanging with him. In fact, I do not remember any gospel evidence of Jesus writing a journal or keeping a fast or making a confession or even joining a celebration, unless we want to count that wedding in Cana. I suppose he was chaste, but the text never say that. And there's reason to think he engaged in corporate worship, but the evidence for that is still pretty thin. But conversation, he was good at that. The accounts clearly demonstrate he did it frequently. In fact, as much as preaching and teaching, his practice of talking with people and listening to people characterized his ministry, shaped his mission, perhaps even constituted his very mission. I'd have to say for Jesus, conversation was a spiritual discipline. It was holy conversation, somebody said to me when I was talking about this. And I agree with that. I had never thought about conversation in this way. Too many of the more established spiritual disciplines favor people of a certain sort. We might even say introverts, quiet people, folk who like to be still and alone, who like to meditate by themselves for, hours at a time, certainly longer than I can. Like Dr. Carroll, I'm a talker. I still hold my elementary school record for having to write the most times I will not talk. But maybe Dr. Carroll, in this way, we're both more like Jesus than we thought. Maybe this is why I have found my calling hosting a program on, quote, conversations on religion and American life, end quote. And maybe my dialogue 2 weeks ago with Dr. Carroll here in the Meetinghouse will be yet another mind-changing, life-affirming conversation, like others that have punctuated and empowered my spiritual pilgrimage from the very first day. Thank you, Dr. Carroll, and thank you, Reverend Heath, for good conversation, and let's talk again real soon. I'm Dwight. I'm Dwight Moody in the Meetinghouse with Mary Heath, and we'll be back in just a minute. You've been in the Meetinghouse with me, your host, Dr. Dwight A. Moody. Thank you for listening, watching today, or any day that you're listening and watching. Because the program is on Facebook, it's available, it's archived there, and you can watch it anytime. Our website is themeetinghouse.net, and we encourage you to visit that website and learn all about the Meeting House. There's some information about me and our board of advisors, information about how you can give and support what we're doing. Read many scores and scores of commentaries organized by subject. I've got commentaries on Donald Trump and Trumpism and C.S. Lewis and one of my new heroes, John Prine. Commentaries about my dad, Tom Moody, and myself and my journey as a minister and as leading the Meeting House. Commentaries about religion and American life and about Roman Catholics and Southern Baptists, which was for many years my heritage. All of these shows are podcast, and we'll be up with a podcast within 24 hours, maybe even 2 hours, how quickly they put them up. You can subscribe to my weekly newsletter called The Meeting House. It goes out on Wednesday evening, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So if you can't watch the show, you can read the newsletter. It has much of the same information, not the conversations, of course, but the news and the commentary. You can join our Circle of 70. Next Tuesday is Giving Tuesday. And you can give money to support the Meeting House, or you can give money to support this refugee resettlement out there in Oklahoma. That's a good place to give. But you can also give to us. I'm creating student internships in conjunction with a regional university. I hope to make some announcements about this before too long. But if I do these internships, I'll certainly need your support. You can go to the support page at the Meeting House. Thank you for all of you who are listening today, coming to you over Rejoice Radio, rejoice975.com. That's 97.5 FM and 94.7 in Glenn County, Georgia. Brunswick, Georgia, where my home is and is our base operating and broadcasting system. That's why we have been following since the 1st of March of last year, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. You can also go to the Meeting House Facebook page and my personal Facebook page. Thanks to the engineer Everett Armstrong in the studio in the Golden Isles of Georgia, Alex Mattingly in Lexington, Kentucky. Mary, thanks for being my guest today. You've been great. You are lead the Commission on Refugees and Immigrants for the Christian Church of Oklahoma Disciples. I'm from Kentucky, which played a big role in the formation of the Disciples.
Yes, that's correct. That's our home. That's our first home, Kentucky.
Yes, I've been out to the Cane Ridge Meeting House many times. Oh. Have you been there?
No, I have not, but I'm told I will go at some point.
Well, you've been down and spent so much time down there in Central America. You need to spend a little time in Central Kentucky.
Exactly, I do. My husband's family is from there. Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, then you need to go and see them and
absolutely
visit the Meeting House. Really, it's a spectacular place.
I would love to. Thank you. I will take you up on that.
You can go down to Shaker Village at Pleasant Hill, that restored. In fact, that's where you should stay when you go to Central Kentucky.
Okay.
It's on the Kentucky River, the Shaker Village. I'll bet your husband knows a little about Shaker Village. And then, of course, you need to go to Rupp Arena. You know what we do in Rupp Arena?
No, I have no idea.
Well, my word, Mary, I don't know how you...
I know, right?
You didn't...
Where have I been all this time?
Where have you been? We didn't vet you carefully enough. Rupp Arena...
Obviously.
...is where the Kentucky Wildcats play basketball. And you've never been there.
No,
well,
I'm not a sports person, no.
Well, it's not too late to convert to being a sports fan.
True. I have watched the Cowboys play a little bit recently, and OU.
Yes.
And there's lots of excitement in the living room. So it
That's
apparently,
right.
yes, I do need to be a
That's
convert.
right. This is a big season.
Yeah.
Basketball, football's wrapping up, and football's big out there in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. Is it ever? That's like our second religion here.
It
Yes.
is, yes, like basketball is the second religion. And I'm, of course, in North Carolina, where basketball is a big religion as well. And we're just
Right.
very close to Georgia, where it's the biggest religion, football is.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being my guest today. Say hello to my friend Dave Emery out there, who pastors a disciple church and
Okay.
a great supporter of the Meeting House. Blessings. Maybe our Dave wants me to come out to Tulsa, and I hope to do that sometime soon. Maybe our paths will cross and we'll meet face to face sometime.
That would be great. You just give me a shout. Keep my
Okay.
phone number.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and
Happy
all
Thanksgiving.
the people that you love. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody this week. Be safe as you drive. Millions of people are driving. My children are driving on their way tomorrow and Friday. Be safe as you drive. Do justice. Love mercy. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Get a vaccine. Drink some coffee. I haven't talked too much about my sponsors, Perfecto Coffee Inc. Mary, I'm going to send you some coffee.
Oh,
Order you
nice.
some coffee from our sponsors, Perfecto Coffee. They're out in California. They were my um, students at Georgetown College when I was teaching there, and moved out to California, opened a coffee business, and I'm going to send you some of their coffee, Perfecto Coffee.
Thanks. I love coffee.
Let's all pray for the soul of America. I'm in a prayer group that meets every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time from about 7 or 8 states, praying for America, praying for our leadership, our governors, our school superintendents, our business executives, pastors, and the President of the United States. We pray for them all. I encourage you to do the same. Be kind to everyone. Give thanks. In the Meeting House, I'm Dwight A. Moody, your host. Have a great day.
You have been in the Meeting House with host Dwight A. Moody. Thank you for watching or listening today. Visit our website at themeetinghouse.net for more news, reviews, commentaries, and conversation on religion and American life.